Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Adams.
we are now live.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, August 11th, 2020 emergency meeting of the Hendry County School Board. If Reverend Brown would lead us in the invocation at this time.
Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we're so grateful for this chance to discuss the business of the Hendry County school system. Please, Lord, bless our efforts today. In Jesus' name, amen.
And Dr. Berg, at this time, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Berg. Now we are moving on to the part of the agenda for citizen comment on agenda items. Superintendent, do we have any citizen comments at this time?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. We have two. Good Superintendent Paletti and School Board member. First, let me thank Superintendent Paletti, School Board members John Vasquez, Amanda Nelson, and Stephanie Busa for their prompt responses and phone calls over the past week. I am thankful and respectful for the opportunity to have productive dialogue and hopefully help create the opportunity for our children to attend brick and mortar school as soon as possible. Second, for those that are afraid or dismissive in their thoughts that the school board nor the superintendent know about what you have to say, I want to take this time and challenge you next time and take the time and give these elected officials a chance to do their jobs.
Do you hear it break up?
As you can hear, I was able to get responses out of 3 school board members and the superintendent. Well worth my time. Third, administrators, teachers, parents, various other support staff. You all are essential. You all are challenged and charged with teaching our kids what most parents can't teach. You spend many hours in college in training and instructional and on-the-job training to do what you do for a living. Most of you do it because you feel called to this profession. We all have faith in you that you will do your level best in these trying times and these uncertain times. But many of us have been working in uncertain times since March. Not all of the 99.97% of Americans who do get COVID-19. Of course, we all have loved ones who are concerned about it at home. That is not anything they all listed with many reasons why, but in my opinion, none of them outweigh the benefits and need for educating our future. Last and most importantly, in the first 10 minutes of the last school board meeting, Superintendent Paletti admitted that 15% of Hendry County's 7,000 students were going to be left without or left behind because they do not have the resources or capability to virtually learn at home. What do we have? That is 7,000 times 15%, which equals 1,050 students. And even if we cut that number to half, that's 525 young people, 525 future bright stars that may never recover. That is nothing less acceptable. This isn't your fault as board members nor as superintendent, but it is vitally important that such a high percentage of students in rural Hendry not get left behind. It is your obligation to provide them with the educational opportunities. I know there will be challenging for adjustments. There may even be some small outbreaks. Life is not without risk. Yes, we should social distance. Yes, we need to wash our hands more. Yes, we need to wear masks at times, so as not to share sneezes and coughs with each other. In summary, thank you for all that you have done and will continue to do in your service to the Hendry and you gave us parents 3 options. I believe or more chose brick and mortar school as their option. Please allow those that choose the in-school learning option for various reasons unknown to all of us the opportunity to send our beloved children to school. Respectfully and compassionately, Matthew Yeomans, LaBelle, Florida. Secondly, please share these comments at your August 11th emergency board meeting. One, we will support an August 31st traditional open date. Two, we support paying teachers fully in the contracts if the traditional open date is moved to August 31st. Three, we ask that you consider taking body temperature, let me start that over. Three, we ask that you reconsider taking body temperatures as children arrive at school. There are many factors that can alter a correct temperature reading. The type and quality of the device, proper training for a large number of staff to accomplish daily checks, calibration, and skill in taking the reading, among others. We believe there will be many temperature checks that are in error and will cause more issues than it would help. Parents should be responsible for their own children's temperature checks because if a child is ill, they should not be taken to school. Thank you, respectfully, Hendry and Charlene Howard, Lavelle, Florida. Madam Chair, those are all the comments we have.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'm getting some feedback from folks that they're not able to hear very well. So if a person's not presently talking in the meeting, can we please turn off the microphones? I think that's creating some feedback and making it hard for folks to hear at home. But thank you, Superintendent, for those public comments, and thank you for the folks who took the time to reach out and make those comments. So I guess the meat and the potatoes of this meeting is our action item, which is the school reopening for 2020 and 2021. At this time, I would like to yield the floor to the superintendent and let him roll out to us all the changes that have occurred over this past week.
Okay, and if you will allow me, I also want to give some historical data from last Tuesday through today, and then I'll highlight what the changes are.
Yes, sir, please.
Last Tuesday, based on information we had received from the Hendry County Department and issues in our discussions with the State Department of Education, I made the recommendation that our school plan be amended to a distance learning only until Hendry's data regarding COVID looked better. That was submitted, and I called the state immediately the next day so that they were aware that we had amended the original plan that had been submitted for the July 31st deadline. We had been in discussion with the state. They said the chancellor had been talking with me, the chancellor of education, of how we can go about implementing that. We skirted around and this is what caused confusion and some outbreak of concern. We skirted around any hard opening date. Instead, we used the terminology that we would want to study our data until the high risk of community spread had subsided, which at first passed muster. Then later in the week, I was asking the chancellor, what wording do you want me to use to accommodate that? He said, that's what we're working on, hold on. Friday evening, I went out with my wife and came back and discovered that Hillsborough County had done something that had caused the ire of the Department of Education. We are in a different boat than Hillsborough County. First of all, our submitted plan had not been approved at that point, nor did the board change what the plan was saying. Their board did that. They said they would start at such and such a time, and they would revisit it 4 weeks from now. Hendry, we never said that, okay? Plus, we let the Department of Education know what was going on. The other issue is we did not have an approved plan. We had a plan that was in the process of getting approved. But that was a big difference. We also had been in conversation with the chancellor from day one on this whole get-go. So that when I saw what had happened in Hillsborough County, I actually called the chancellor that night, Friday night. And he went over the details. He said, well, we're still working on it, Paul. Get with us Monday and we'll work something out. In the meantime, I called our school board attorney, I called our board chair, and we determined at that time that the best thing that I could do at that point was to advise the board members that in light of what had happened in Hillsborough, we may have to readdress what's going on in Hendry. We worked, and the reason I asked the board chair to do this is because, first of all, she's the board chair. You selected her as board chair. Secondly, have more than one of you working at a time, I don't want to be involved in any kind of sunshine issue. So I worked solely with the board chair. I worked all weekend on this plan. The board chair was very instrumental in getting me the data, okay? When I spoke to the chancellor Friday, he was looking at the wrong line item, okay? This was just a brain malfunction. We've all done it before. And he said, your data don't look that bad. And I said, really? He said, yes, Hardy County. I said, no, Hendry County. So he said, oh. And then he said, yes, it does look a bit different. He said, let's get together Monday and we will work something. Now, we have our data. The point was that we were trying to edge past that August 31st recommendation, and talking with him, he, and much to his credit, he researched Hendry County's data by the time Mrs. Buse and I talked to him. So he knew what Hendry County looked like. And while we may debate these things, his words to us were, Hendry County's data looks twice as bad as other districts. And I'm talking about our COVID data. And you may have heard the governor say yesterday that schools could, if they looked similar to Dane County, delay instruction. If you look at our 2-week data, we not only look very similar to Dane County, we exceed some of Dane County's 2-week measurements, okay? Therefore, we were talking, he said, the issue we have is that the commissioner's executive order says brick and mortar must start by the 31st, and your plan doesn't address that. So I said, okay, let's address it, let's do this. The chancellor then said to me that he understood our need to go with distance learning and virtual learning, and for those people who pick brick and mortar, that it all starts on the 24th. He said that will give you an additional week to survey your data and hopefully see that it starts flattening out. He said then I would say that classes should start on August 31st. So there we meet the requirement of what the commissioner's executive order says, and school would start brick and mortar definitely August 31st. Now, people, I need to understand, we cannot eliminate risk, all right? But we can mitigate risk. The reason that there are guardians on campus isn't to eliminate the threat of a potential catastrophic event. It is to mitigate the potential catastrophic event. So that's what we're after. There are going to be, and that's what our new plan represents, a start for everyone, distance and virtual and brick and mortar on the 24th. That would be through distance learning, that would be digital. Then August 31st, we have a beginning of brick and mortar instruction. So my recommendation would be to the school board to approve that piece of our plan.
Okay, Superintendent, for the purpose of clarification, so what you've articulated is a general start of school virtually on the 24th. And
Okay.
then because to me, I'm getting a little confused by that, and so if we could just get some clarification.
All right. Part of the problem that is confusing to us, and it's particularly confusing to the Department of Education, virtual instruction means that those students have gone to a separate company, okay? So when we use that terminology, where it sounds to them as if we're saying all of our students are going to go to FLM, the Florida Virtual School, or K-12. That's one of our options, okay? The second option is an innovative model which would allow students to learn digitally from home with lessons provided from Hendry County teachers. What we had worked out with the Department of Education as part of our plan is that of the 3 groups of students, option 1, brick and mortar, and those who pick the digital innovative plan would start on Monday, August 24th. Brick and mortar, option 1, would start August 31st after a week of the distance digital learning.
Okay, so my question, pardon me, my question is, so if the student signed up for the digital, which would be the Hendry County digital learning, they would start on the 24th, or would all students start or digitally the 24th and then go into the 31st? If they chose brick and mortar.
If they chose brick and mortar, they would start digitally also on the 24th. The reason being is I can then count those days, okay, for instruction, and we're not losing any days, and I'm not giving up any days. Because if I give up days, to make this absolutely clear, if we started August 31st, I've got to pull those 5 days out of the calendar, okay? We have already had teachers on the job since the 2nd. If I pull 5 additional days out of the calendar, my crystal ball not being any better than anyone else's, I am very short in the event of an emergency. And I would look at the possibility of having to extend the school year for you folks, for the students and teachers. If I extend the school year, since teachers have already reported at their regular time, that's a tremendous expense of several $100,000 per day for our employees to pay. So if we can hold those days, and we worked with the chancellor on this, if I can hold those days, I have them it's an insurance policy. And it also gives us the same, another week to look at our data. Our data don't look good. And he acknowledged that. And he told us you are twice as high as other districts. And you look very similar to Dade. And we do. We do. So that's why we would say everybody could start on the 24th, some digitally. Now, if I'm a brick and mortar, suppose I chose brick and mortar, I still have a choice of not doing anything until brick and mortar opens. You see what I'm saying? So that we could then give people, they have one more choice to make.
Would that create a truancy issue? If, that was our official start date, and we expected a first week initial digital start, if someone who would choose brick and mortar, if they said, well, no, I'm not gonna participate in that, I'm just gonna wait for the brick and mortar opening, on the proposed opening on the 31st, would that be a truancy issue? Or would it count towards their, unexcused absences?
Okay, traditionally, the first 10 days or so, we're not taking attendance simply because there is so much flux in coming and going, all right? So the schedule changes in that regard. I am anticipating also that by the time we open brick and mortar, there are going to be some parents and students who choose not to be on the remote digital platform and come back to the brick and mortar. Okay, so what it enables us to do is capture those minutes that the state requires, particularly at the secondary level for at all levels for funding, and at the secondary level for credit accrual.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
am I understanding this right, Mr. Belletti? You're not going to ask the ones that are coming back to brick and mortar, you're not going to have them do the virtual for the 5 days, they're just not going to be attendance at all for the first 5 days?
No, that's not correct. What I was saying is that the first 5 days could be by the brick and mortar student on the digital platform.
Well, I think that's probably a nightmare.
Well, it's not necessarily, because what we were then saying is that there may be some of those who decide it's not worth the bother. Then they go to school on the 31st, but those first 5 days are not going to be counted against them because we're not necessarily traditionally taking attendance on those days. These devices have to go out anyway. Some of our students, some of the parents in the past week that I've talked to already have the devices at home, and they were brick and mortar people to start with. But the devices need to go out because what happens if we do have a surge, okay? And we do see some people. I just want to share some information with you regarding the outbreak. Now you realize our responses to COVID are not dictated by us necessarily, but by the health department and other public health entities. If I'm trying to build a trend line, I will look back 2 weeks. I won't necessarily take a cumulative total because that's going to give me a false picture. It's going to just show increase, increase, increase. Whereas I want to see, is it increasing or is it decreasing? So I look at a 2-week trend line. In that 2-week trend line, we currently have 15 employees out. Some who are sick, some who have been exposed, okay? So they are since teachers have returned, of those 15, and teachers returned last Monday, 10 are now out, okay? You understand? And 7 of those 10 who are now out are school-based. They either have it or they're quarantined because they have been exposed to it. Of the 15 in the past 2 weeks, 7 are back. So even though we might say that there are 4 supposed persons out 4 days, put those 4 days in office, on a school bus, or whatever, and that does have an ability to impact how school operates. So what I'm saying is, while it might be a nightmare, it might be a necessity, and it would be good for those people to go ahead and have their devices.
Wow.
Well,
You know, the only question though would be,
well,
still looking at internet and everything else, so the first 5 days services and all of that stuff, I think it's very, a very big mess. Not to mention the fact that they're trying to go, then they're trying to transfer from digital to classroom, and I think there's going to be a huge disconnect there.
For the days, I would have to disagree with you, because we do have, maybe 5% of our student body does not have electronic digital platform available. Those students would have an alternative. That does not mean they would be sitting home. And by adding these additional days up front to what the teachers, is to enhance their training to improve the digital experience over what they experienced in March. So that's what we've bought, that's what we're buying with this additional time for teacher planning. So yes, it could be. If we move everything back, that is one more change we have to go to the State Department with. This was from the State Department itself telling us what they saw based on what we have in Hendry County as probably the most prudent way to go.
I understand that. I'm just thinking that instead of making all those changes, I think we just stay with the 24th, start with the brick and mortar on the 24th and roll with it. It's a week difference.
We actually considered that, and we were instructed and recommended by the chancellor not to do that because our data don't look good. And give you one more week to look at flattening that data before a student comes in, the students return. And the chair was with me when conversation was going on. I don't think I misrepresented anything to the board that was discussed.
No, I mean, and you know that I'll call it out, if that wasn't the case. And I did listen in on that conversation, and that was, the recommendation from DOE. And the way that it was being, I thought was an excellent point, and one that I myself, didn't even have that, thought when we were having that discussion. But what he said is, if you look at our numbers, whatever metrics they are using to designate, like Miami and Broward is one, like we exceed those metrics. And so he said, like, the concern was a potential outbreak. And we're, and I think we all are prepared to understand that we may have, or in certain factions of the school, if they are impacted. And that this week would actually provide the opportunity to have some experience with that online learning. In the event that, say, that cohort does get sent home, there's a continuity there. They know what to expect in that digital instruction, and it provides a higher quality of digital instruction instead of just thrusting them back into that emergency distance learning that we were doing in spring. Because the probability of sending cohorts home at this point is, and with this data and the community spread, is really high. And so when he framed it, because I was thinking along the same lines as you, Mr. Bass, when I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be such a confusing, heavy lift. But when you frame to allow experience, and so when that crucial time comes, that transition is a little more seamless, and instead of just thrusting them back into a situation where we're just scrambling.
And if the numbers don't go down by the 31st, then we're still in the exact same boat. We've lost a week.
No, we start on the 31st.
No.
That's what
I'm saying is the kids that are going digital. I've had so many parents and so many teachers telling me that the digital, I understand you're telling me it's a different platform and all of that, but You know, when you've got, like one lady told me, she said, I've got 4 students, 4. They're all in different grades. How am I gonna get 4 classrooms going at my dining room table at the same time, and I'm not there to help them? You know, so it's things like that, so they're gonna fall behind, is the concern.
And as you should be, but here's what the plan would be. School opens digitally and everything else on the 24th. The 31st, brick and mortar opens. If we have, and hopefully we don't, and we will have the history of surrounding districts and other places to look at to see what's happening, okay? If we have an outbreak in our schools, guess what? Beyond our control, it shuts down and we go remote anyway. So that mom or that teacher is still facing the same issue. But we will at least be able to have face-to-face contact. Hopefully, we can continue on throughout the year, but this would be the best plan of what are our bad choices.
So what does it look like for teachers that are going to bring their children to work with them? How's that gonna work if they've got their own kids in their classroom, they're trying to teach a class virtually and make sure their kids are getting their work done?
Again, let me explain what we had allowed to have happen. We are also employers, so we have to look at what is happening with our employees and how we can impact them. Therefore, we said your students can come to school. We never said, and you're going to keep your students, your children in your class. As a matter of fact, I talked with all principals to say see if there was a para who could at least maintain a semblance, you know, the supervision. And also, those students could then be able to access their work in a separate room.
So you're going to put all of the teachers together?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Yes. So you're going to put all the teachers, kids in one group together, like in another or something? Is that what you thought?
We will socially distance. And some have a variety, the numbers range. There is a huge variety in numbers. Some numbers are 30-something students at one elementary down to 9 at another elementary in Clewiston. So the students would be together, it would look like, and this plan is now almost mute because we start on the 31st. Okay?
I understand
So
that.
the
I'm
parents
just thinking,
moving forward for that first week, in order to keep employees from having to leave work, they can bring their school-aged children with them. If they're middle and high school, that's old enough to stay at home, okay? So they can bring them with them. They would be some in a library or somewhere in that, that nature where they can be socially distant. Now, if this is not a decent plan, Mr. Basquin, I would take any kind of recommendation for it.
I recommend we have school on the 24th like normal instead of the 31st. And continue to let the parents' choices be your choices.
Then we go back to the Department of Education with yet another plan that we had put forward to them. And they came up with this suggestion that would be easy, it would be better in terms of looking at the data. I could not get 2 board members at the time in the meetings and discussions with the State Department. I chose to use the board chair. I also chose to use this particular board member because she says what it is. And if I have said something incorrectly or anybody, she would be the one to call me out on it. So that was also why I picked her.
I understand that. I'm not saying that, that you're misleading anybody, Mr. Coletti, not at all. But what I'm saying is that.
I got some things from other people that indicated to me
Okay,
that.
gentlemen, hey, right now we need to refocus and focus on what we're doing here and the productive conversation. So, Mr. Bassman.
Yes, I mean, dang.
I would like to, come beside, I think we should start August 31st. I would like some of the other board members' opinion. We already know that, Mr. Bassman wants it really earlier than that. So would you check that?
I'm in agreement with the 31st for brick and mortar.
That's two.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, I'm in agreement with starting on the 31st. I don't see no other option. We can try to rush back in, but we're just in a dangerous time now. And I just pray that our kids are safe. But 31st be fine with me.
Exactly.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, what do you think? Three.
So Dr. Berg and Superintendent and board, what I'm seeing here is I see validity in all sides of the conversation. But, you know, I know what I don't know, and what I don't know COVID impact. What I do know and what's available is the data and how it stacks up against phase 1 counties and how we're exceeding that. And, you know, no one's gonna know who's right until time passes. And when time passes and we haven't done enough, then that's gonna be absolutely obvious. If time passes and we have done enough, you're not gonna see the negative impact, and which is what I think we're all hoping for. But considering, you know, you have to take all aspects of this issue into personal decision making, and I think it's pertinent for our, you know, to offer the options within the state deadline, all three options that for parents and that have chosen that. And I think that it is very prudent and essentially a contingency plan to highly encourage that digital participation in the first week, because the likelihood of having to do that down the road at some point, whether it's for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, that's important too, because you just, you know, I think the one thing in this debate that everybody can agree on is we don't want to thrust our students back into that emergency digital learning that we had in the spring.
Yeah.
And so, you know, listening in on the conversation with the Department of Education, and you know, I don't think there is a perfect solution. I think that this one helps prepare for a bad situation down the road, and I think that it still offers with option the executive the orders. And I don't think we're going to have something that everybody is 100% psyched about. But I think that this one, this plan, and all of its imperfection, is a good option. And well, let me rephrase that. It is the best bad option. Yeah. And so I'm going to have to support it. I think that the superintendent has been transparent in it, and in everything he said, there's been no misrepresentation. And you know, we have to hope for the best, want the best, but prepare for less than ideal situation. And just that thought of, that week's worth of experiencing facilitation and the digital platform, we just don't know how long an outbreak can shut down a school. I know the FADS Association has reached out to the Department of Education and asked them for uniform scenario responses to outbreaks and exposures and stuff like that. Well, I think that the superintendents are still waiting on guidance for that. But in order to balance the educational needs of our community and the health risks and needs of our community, that's your best case scenario. So that was pretty wordy, but.
No, Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
okay. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that I am totally wrong. Because I have no skin in the game. Well, I have all sorts of skin in this game, but absolutely no ego that is gonna send me hightailing it in shame. I would much rather err on the side of caution. If we present it in the light of this would be a dry run attempt in this first week, I can still count these days for instructional minutes. They would not impact us. Retain minutes within the year in the event of an emergency. And that's, my crystal ball is just as cloudy as anyone else's, but it has happened to us before. And I just wanted to say that again. It will probably not be the easiest transition piece, but I do not see it hurting students to go 5 days in one and then going back to brick and mortar. Okay? I anticipate that after this first week, there are going to be more students who feel as if they need to go to brick and mortar. And this would be the best time to do it, rather than transition in September or October if they're so inclined. So let's look at it not as if, let's look at it as a dry run attempt. But then on the 31st, brick and mortar is open, buses are running, and things are going. Now, that would be my recommendation. This has already met approval by the State Department. We got approval last night. And I would recommend that we approve as a board the latest revised reopening plan that has the 24th and the 31st. 31st brick and mortar, 24th, those students who have chosen and those parents who have chosen the digital option need to get this equipment anyway. So it will just be a matter of us getting to the principals and now saying, now let's figure out a distribution. Because it's likely to fail.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I have one more clarification for Mr. Play. For the week of the 24th, that will be distance learning. Will students be assigned, I'm going to go elementary here. Will students be assigned a classroom teacher? So all teachers will have a group, correct?
Correct.
And on the 31st, they're going to be re-scrambled, potentially with a different teacher because one of the teachers may be extracted.
Okay.
How about that's the piece I'm not understanding.
How that is shaking out at this point is principals have their teachers who said we want to be distance teachers. So those students who have signed up for it have been assigned those teachers. Everyone else has been assigned a teacher. So that for this first week, we would have the students with their teacher regardless, so that when they come on the 31st, they go to that teacher's class.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So do we have enough technology to hand out to every student?
Yes, we did, and last year we do actually have more.
And how many students do we have that actually has that technology in hand right now? Do you know?
I don't know that number. I know some do, because I've talked to parents who've already said, well, I have the Chromebook already.
How are we planning on getting the technology to the rest of the students that do not have it?
Okay, on my end, that clip that you clicked out.
How are we planning on
Say
getting
that.
the technology to the rest of the students that do not have it currently?
The same way we did in March, they would come get it.
And the ones that aren't able, the ones that we handed papers out to, what are we gonna do about them?
They would have the assignments and the duty delivered to them. They, well, let me say this, they might, or, as we did in the spring, deliver them to those people. But we have to realize this is a different, this, if we, I'm not talking about this first week, but let's say it happens that a classroom or a school has to shut down. They're gonna be digital anyway. Attendance and assignments will count because we're adding rigor back to it. Remember, in the spring, we were dealing with grace and compassion. So yes, we will always have that, but we're going to have to add a degree of rigor because at some point during this year, assessments are scheduled to take place. So unless something happens, and I hope I'm wrong, that on August 31st, when we ring the bell, people start, and we keep going until May. You know, this isn't a good situation. This wasn't a good situation in March. We have, I think, made it a better situation. But we're not, you know, we're a school. We're not the phone company. We're not a cable provider. We're not an internet provider. We can do our best to get these services to these outlying areas, but we're gonna have to make some accommodation. We're gonna have to make an accommodation for the Collegiate Academy kids, students. Some of them live in this outlying area, and the accommodation we're gonna have to make is there are not paper, pencil, alternative assignments for those students. They have to complete what the other college students have to do. So we're gonna have to make an accommodation for them to get them to a place where there is the proper technology. Again, that might just be for a week. Hopefully that's all it is for. But again, it's a different curriculum standard because Florida Southwestern deals with that curriculum which the syllabus says this must be covered. We have more flexibility in the delivery of our curriculum, which students will be able to revisit some things that they have not learned or picked up. We're gonna have the other things you have to be aware of this first week. There are gonna be tremendous gaps in learning among our students when they come in. So that first week is probably gonna be dealing with that. And then remedial or any other work that needs to take place, takes place once they're brick and mortar in front of the teacher.
So, I mean, I don't know, have you had a chance to discuss any of this with the staff and principals and things like that? Have you gotten any feedback from them? And the reason I ask that is because I actually had a message sent to me from a teacher up in Orlando who's done this same thing. They said that the first was a nightmare.
But the only thing is, was not improved at all. It wasn't a little bit. So that was part of my concern, that I only do it for 5 days. I think it just really will be a real nightmare.
You heard from a teacher, Orlando, and then it bobbled in and out again. I'm assuming the teacher in Orange County.
Right. They say it was no better this time around than it was the first time around, and have discussed this plan with our principals and staff to see what their thoughts are, how to make it better, where it doesn't do that.
We have discussed the plan, not the plan that I'm giving you today, but we have discussed how this is happening, and this is why they have scheduled additional training. Now, it's my understanding Orange County is also opening on a digital platform.
Right, you're saying it's a nightmare at this point, just as it was at the end of last year, is what I've been told.
Well, that gives us hope. We're looking at those 5 days, and then we're hoping that I'm wrong. But when students return to the school, the numbers that I gave you of those people who are out, either they're sick or who are being quarantined, is going to go up. Okay, it just happens. People get colds when they come back from summer vacation. That's what's going to happen here. The difference is I don't have the health department saying these standards must be followed with a cold. Although we know not to send students to work or staff members to go to work. Now, this particular plan, I have not talked to our staff other than a select few. I have not rolled it out to the teachers or to our administrators at the school, except them listening to this meeting, okay? Because frankly, I have been going both barrels wide it's Friday night, and I have not had a chance to shake loose to talk to them individually, but we will have a meeting, okay? But there is some people, we need to understand, sometimes this has more information than other people. Not that we're special, but it's just the nature of the beast. We are the people who have been designated to be the administrators of the district. We have more information. Do we have all of the answers? No. But I don't, I feel like I have been given input. I have been talking about this. We put this out. People know that there are 3 options. One, which is a local digital option. So people have known to be getting ready for this. Because a teacher who is a 3rd grade teacher may well have digital students they have to deal with, regardless of our opening.
Okay, and now, I just want to make sure, clarification-wise, that everything that we're doing, I know you said you talked to the commissioner legally, we're not running into any kind of legal problems doing this, what we're doing? Is our attorney listening?
Molly, can I please have you address Mr. Basquin's?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Basquin, Superintendent, members of the board. Yes, gladly. No, there should not be any legal issues with this plan. As the superintendent stated, with the executive order, they said to open brick and mortar at some point during August, and so since we're doing this, there should be, in addition to that, it's clear it's been vetted already and approved, so there should not be any legal issue with this plan as stated.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
To clarify, Madam Chair, if I could, we were dealing with the chancellor, not the commissioner. The chancellor was dealing with the commissioner on our behalf. We received approval of this plan yesterday from the State Department of Education.
Mr. Basquin, this is overall just an awful situation. I can see the validity in 100% of your comments, every single one. I can see the validity in because it's all valid, it's all, I mean, and I think that, you know, going back to, you know, between having the buy-in from the Department of Education and then that approval, as well as meeting those legal guidelines, and in combination with giving us an opportunity, you know, the digital start gives us an opportunity to see how things shake out in districts that have started on the 10th or who plan to start on the 17th. And it gives us that information that can be extremely valuable going forward and helping guiding us to making our reopening sustainable. And I think that's what's most important is in this whole thing is when we get it open, we want to keep it open. And if we do have to shut it down, then our transition and that continuity for digital instruction that we're prepared for. So, I mean, there's just no good, there's no perfect solution. There's really no good ones, but, you know, considering, you know, what I heard with my own ears from the DOE, this is probably the most prudent of our options. All right, is there, you know, so at this time, is there any further, do we want to, any further comment here from board members or?
Madam Chair, I do.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a couple of things. Somebody asked when we start busing students, we talked about checking them when they get to the school. What is the possibility of giving temperature checks at the bus stops? And you could prevent spread whenever you get on the bus.
There is, yes, I can address that. I can't answer that because you understand building this plan is sort of like making this sandcastle out of Jello, okay? And the one issue that we have, if we conduct temperature checks at the bus, are we as a district prepared to leave a student on the side of the road? That one answer we're going to have to come up with. Secondly, what has happened is everyone was saying temperature check, temperature check. The Florida Pediatric Association is now saying you don't need to do temperature checks. That's up to the parents. You had a comment today with someone who has medical background saying that might be up to the parents because those people who are doing the temperature checks that might be faulty, so on and so forth. So I've got to go from here and discuss or have someone discuss it with our school nurses to see what is our new policy or what, not policy, what would be our new procedure. But as far as taking a temperature for a student getting on the bus, and if you have a faulty reading or something of that nature, is the district prepared to leave the child on the side of the road?
Yeah, I understand that, but they're there before we get there on the side of the road to begin with. So, I mean, if we tell the parents ahead of time, you need to make sure that you have preparations if this happens, you know, something like that. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just asking the question.
What, no, and I'm not sure we will have. Now, what our plan had been up until this time is that there would be isolation seats on the bus so that if there is a student who is not feeling well, and remember, they will all be wearing masks. If they're not feeling well, they will be sitting in that seat and then report to the nurse, or the nurse reports to them, or whatever, when the bus arrives on campus. Sitting will be by family, and the social distance will be taken as closely as we can do it. But we will have families sitting together. We will have whatever kind of route place so that looks different on the bus than what we normally see people piled in.
Okay. Then the other question was that Ms. Nelson had mentioned the shields when she saw the little ones. And the question was, who put the shields in? Are those provided by the district? Every classroom going to have that for the little ones? What?
We have shields. Okay, now the shields are not effective if you're working one-on-one with a student. So the shield would work with a mask, and that's in the policy that you adopted, the emergency policy, so that the closer the teacher gets to the student, the mask has to be there. But the shield would work as long as I'm like 6 feet away from the class. If I'm an English teacher lecturing on Shakespeare and I'm at the front of the desk, the shield should be there. But I'm pretty certain we have shields at schools, just as we have masks.
But I think they were talking about around the desk, if I wasn't mistaken. Didn't Ms. Nelson say they were around the desks?
That was the kindergarten classroom that I was in, and they were going to put the plexiglass around each individual desk. And I know that VK has purchased shields for their tables as well.
So that was the question, is that going to happen for every classroom? Is that going to be standard or what?
No, that's not gonna happen. I'm sorry, I misunderstood when you said the shield. I thought you were talking about the face shield, not the desk shield. That is happening at the little children's level, not throughout the district.
So it's only one classroom, couple classrooms, and who's buying those?
Federal project at pre-K.
And
I'm not sure about your burden.
how many classes have those currently?
Mr. Bassman, I'm gonna have to get that data back to you.
Okay. I just-
Priority, oh, sorry.
I was here.
A question, is it at teacher discretion as far as the plexiglass goes, or is that something that we are asking them to do? Mr. Bleddy.
That is teacher discretion. I'm trying to get with someone right now to give me more guidance on this particular issue. I had no clue it was coming up. I thought we were gonna be talking about the emergency plan, but that's okay. Give me a minute.
While you're seeking that question, if I may piggyback onto that and ask if there's like a priority that would be given to the little ones, the shields in the younger classrooms, as they have been kind of proven to be the ones who would struggle the most with wearing masks, to provide that additional level of protection.
Yes. Because little ones are somewhat more difficult to corral and are much more touchy-feely. And so that would be how we would do it. And then I don't mean that in a bad way. It's a beautiful thing. But we live in a different world right now.
And another thought, Mr. Basquin, about, like I said, it's not wrong thinking about, wanting to temperature check them at the bus stop. But the consideration, and one consideration that just popped up would be the traffic backup. Don't want to have kids standing on the side of the road any longer and than they have to be, and any kind of traffic flow issues, additional traffic flow issues that would cause, particularly on like, the Montreux roads or Flagpole Road and areas like that. In those busy areas that would just create more time for those kids And I've actually witnessed that not end well with kids coming off the bus or getting on the bus decades ago. Particularly on those Highway 27 runs.
I understand that, Ms. Newsom, but at the same time, I would much rather hold traffic up and tick off a few drivers than I had to put 35 kids in danger of catching COVID, because we could have prevented it a little bit ahead of time, so.
That's what we're trying to do now, Mr. Basswood, and I understand that. I get what you're saying. Can I go back to the shields, the desk shields? Some principals use their CARES money to purchase them, and federal programs that ordered them. I do not know how many principals did not, nor do I know at this time how many classrooms have them, but we will find out.
I think it would be a good idea for the smaller children to have a shield around their desk. I mean, if that, like that, if we're worried about them, like you said, they're all over the place, so that might not be a bad thing for the smaller children.
Further, it may not be, and if we need to, I can have them submit an emergency PO for the board, okay? We know that as far as going back to checks on the bus, Lee, Duval, and Hillsborough are not taking temperature checks, and we're checking to see now if there are indeed any districts taking temperatures on the bus. We don't think there are any.
I think if we have to, we'll have to slow it down everybody. And start something different. If it would be beneficial.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bassman, I don't know, y'all else heard of it, you're breaking up real bad.
I should have to be more of everybody, and this really, it is so beneficial, I think, our trail, no matter if anybody else always not.
I hate to do this to you again, Mr. Bassman. I didn't understand you the second time, I'm sorry. Can you repeat yourself one more time?
I said that if it would be beneficial to do that, I think it would be a great idea whether other districts are doing it or not. We can always blaze our own trail.
Thank you, that was crystal clear.
Okay, and I'm getting input from other administrators who I've asked to be on this meeting. New CDC guidelines do not recommend mass temperature checks. Okay, and that has changed just over the last few days after we have bought all of these thermometers and temperature devices. So that's what I'm saying. It is not easy to build this plan, particularly when you know that your building material isn't the best that you can deal with. Okay, and we will revisit all of this. We're going to have a staff meeting this week, probably tomorrow, to discuss all of these issues. And I have made note.
All right, guys, do we have anything further on this that we want to hash out before the superintendent makes his recommendation? Okay, at this time, Superintendent, may I have your recommendation?
Yes, Madam Chair. I recommend that the board approve our school reopening plan that calls for an August 24th start date, either remotely or digitally for all students, and an August 31st start date for all students, including brick and mortar students. To make that clear, brick and mortar would be included in the August 24th date for all students.
Thank you. We have the recommendation of a motion. The motion by Reverend Brown. Do I have a
I'll
second? A second by Amanda Nelson. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the recommendation, the motion passes 4-1 with Mr. Bassman dissenting. All right, under board member business, is there any additional board member business as it pertains to the emergency meeting? We can't really get on subjects outside of the topic of the emergency. Dr. Bird, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Nelson, Vice Chair Nelson?
I would just like to say thank you to our chair and to our superintendent for all of the due diligence and hard work. Not an easy, but I appreciate all of the work that we have.
Reverend Brown?
No, ma'am, I just appreciate the efforts of the chairman and also the superintendent. I appreciate that, thank you.
Mr. Bassman?
Good.
All right, so thank you guys for your participation and for being able to convene so quickly for this emergency meeting. And thank you for all the hard work of our staff and the superintendent this weekend. And with that, I'd just like to close the meeting. And I hope everybody has a great day and we can start moving forward and getting this plan implemented on the ground.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right,
Laura.
thank you, everyone.
Thanks.